Ambassador Kim Hana's boots echoed against the polished crystal floor as she walked between rows of towering alien beings. The Galactic Council chamber stretched impossibly high above her, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted, like living galaxies. Thousands of species filled the viewing galleries, their various forms creating a symphony of clicks, hisses, and electronic translations. Her wrists burned where the energy shackles held her arms behind her back. The restraints were designed for beings 3 times her size, their blue-white glow casting eerie shadows on her diplomatic uniform. The Earth insignia on her shoulder seemed pitifully small compared to the massive emblems adorning the council members' ceremonial robes. Councillor Vex-Tar dominated the central platform, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the chamber's lights into prismatic rainbows. His forearms gestured dramatically, while his cluster of compound eyes focused on Hana with predatory intensity. Behind him, the other council members formed an intimidating wall of scales, tentacles, and metallic augmentations. "Human," Vex-Tar's voice boomed through universal translators embedded in the walls. "Your species arrived in our galaxy claiming friendship. You begged for membership in our council. We granted you this privilege, despite your obvious primitiveness." Ripple of alien laughter echoed through the chamber. Species that looked like walking trees rustled their bark-covered limbs in amusement. Floating, jellyfish-like beings pulsed with mocking colors. Even the robotic Nexus delegates clicked their mechanical mandibles in what passed for their version of humor. Hana stood perfectly still, her dark eyes surveying the crowd without fear. She had trained for this moment, though she hoped it would never come. Every human diplomat carried the same hidden device, the same final protocols, the same terrible responsibility. "We welcomed Earth into galactic civilization," continued another counselor, this one resembling a massive insect with gossamer wings. "We shared our trade routes, our technologies, our wisdom. And how do humans repay this generosity? With lies and deception." The charges materialized as holographic text above Hana's head, written in dozens of alien scripts. Violation of the Preservation Accord. Unauthorized development of quantum encryption technology. Refusal to surrender classified military assets. Diplomatic espionage. The list scrolled endlessly upward. "Your quantum encryption threatens the balance of power we have maintained for millennia," Vex-Tar declared, his voice rising to fill every corner of the vast space. "No single species may possess technology that could compromise Council communications. This is fundamental law," Hana finally spoke, her voice calm and clear despite the chamber's acoustics. "The technology belongs to humanity. Earth developed it independently. We have every right to protect our innovations." A chorus of alien protests erupted from the galleries. Tentacled beings slapped their appendages against their seats. Reptilian delegates hissed through translator grids. The noise was deafening until Vex-Tar raised one of his massive arms for silence. "Rights?" His compound eyes glittered with malice. "Primitive species have no rights beyond what the Council grants them. You exist in our galaxy by our sufferance. Your small blue world survives because we allow it." The energy blade began forming above the execution platform, crackling streams of pure plasma, weaving together into a shape that had ended the lives of countless beings over the centuries. Its hum grew louder as the weapon charged, drowning out the whispers from the crowd. Hana was forced to her knees by invisible force fields. The platform beneath her began to glow, ancient alien symbols appearing in the crystal as the execution ritual commenced. She could feel the heat from the energy, blade on her face, smell the ozone it generated as it reached full power. "Let this serve as a lesson to any species that dares defy Council authority," Vex-Tar announced to the broadcasting networks that carried the signal to over 1,000 worlds. "Humans are not special. They are not chosen. They are simply another failed experiment in galactic cooperation." In those final seconds, as alien spectators leaned forward in anticipation and camera drones captured every angle, Hana activated the tiny transmitter embedded in her diplomatic badge. Her lips barely moved as she whispered the coded words that would change everything. "Protocol 7, Authorization Omega. Tell Director Park Min-ho the game begins now." The energy blade descended in a brilliant flash of white light. The execution was over in milliseconds, broadcast live across the galaxy as intended. In the aftermath, as cleanup crews prepared to remove her remains, the aliens congratulated themselves on maintaining order and discipline. None of them noticed the small device in her diplomatic badge had transmitted a final burst of quantum encrypted data through subspace channels. None of them understood that her calm demeanor hadn't been resignation, but anticipation. They saw a primitive human facing the consequences of defying superior beings. They had no idea they had just triggered the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The real game was about to begin, and humanity had been preparing for it much longer than anyone imagined. 3 kilometers beneath the bustling streets of Seoul, Director Park Min-ho sat in a chair that had been waiting for this moment for 37 years. The underground facility stretched for miles in every direction, its corridors carved from solid bedrock and lined with technology that made the Council's most advanced systems look like stone tools. The quantum transmission from Ambassador Kim, Hana, arrived at exactly 14:47 local time, her final words crackling through speakers that had remained silent since the facility's construction. Park's weathered hands didn't shake as he entered his authorization codes into the central command console. His gray eyes reflected the soft blue glow of screens that were about to change the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Around the circular command center, 50 of Earth's most brilliant minds sat at their stations. These weren't the politicians and diplomats the aliens had met during humanity's supposed first contact. These were the real architects of human expansion into the stars, the shadowy figures who had orchestrated the greatest deception in galactic history. "Gentlemen, ladies," Park's voice carried the weight of decades of planning. "They killed our diplomat. The masquerade is over." General Lee Jisoo looked up from her tactical display, her fingers already dancing across holographic interfaces. "Sir, sleeper network activation is ready. We have assets embedded in 43 major star systems. Should I wake them all?" "Every single one," Park replied without hesitation. "Colonel Choi Bin, bring the hidden installations online. It's time the galaxy learned who we really are." The main display wall transformed into a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, its spiral arms slowly rotating as billions of stars glittered like diamonds against the black void. For a moment it looked peaceful, serene, exactly as the council members saw it from their crystalline chambers. Then the red dots began appearing. First 1, then 10, then hundreds, then thousands. Each crimson point of light represented a human operative who had spent years, sometimes decades, living among alien populations. They had learned their languages, adopted their customs, earned their trust and waited for this exact moment. Dr. Yoon Dae, the facility's chief intelligence officer, pulled up detailed profiles as the network came alive. Asset Gamma 7 has been working as a maintenance engineer on the Rigel space stations for 12 years. Beta 15 is a translator in the council chambers themselves. Alpha 2 runs the largest shipping company in the Vega system. Park nodded approvingly as more dots appeared across the galactic map. "How many total assets are we activating?" "Current count shows 4,736 active operatives," Yoon replied, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Plus another 2,000 in deep cover positions that won't be activated unless absolutely necessary." The scope of the operation became clear as regional commanders reported in from across the galaxy. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, human refugees, who had been working in alien factories for 15 years, suddenly revealed their true capabilities. Mining colonies that supposedly housed primitive human settlers activated advanced communication arrays hidden beneath their settlements. Captain Jung Woo, monitoring deep space communications, looked up from his console with barely contained excitement. "Sir, we're receiving confirmations from the Orion arm. The Andromeda Gateway is responding. Even the installations near the galactic core are coming online." Park allowed himself a small smile as he watched the galaxy transform before his eyes. Where the Council saw empty space and unexplored systems, humanity had built a network of hidden bases, weapon platforms, and surveillance stations. Asteroids that had drifted through space for millions of years suddenly revealed themselves as massive monitoring posts. Nebulae that appeared natural on every alien scanner were actually concealing human battleships the size of small moons. "The beauty of it," Park said to his assembled team, "is that they never bothered to look closely. Humans were too primitive, too new, too irrelevant to pose any real threat. They saw what they expected to see." Technical specialist Kim Hai monitored the activation sequences streaming across her displays. "All primary installations are now online, Director. We have full sensor coverage of Council space, complete access to their communication networks, and tactical superiority in 73% of strategic locations." The transformation was breathtaking to watch. The galaxy the Council thought they controlled was revealed to be honeycombed with human presence. Every major trade route was monitored. Every military installation was watched. Every government communication was intercepted. For decades, humanity had been the unseen observer, cataloging weaknesses, mapping defenses, and preparing for the day when the masks would finally come off. Admiral Cho Sung, commander of humanity's hidden fleet, activated his own display, showing ship positions throughout the galaxy. "Director, our vessels are reporting ready status. The Council's long-range sensors can't detect our stealth technology. As far as they know, we still have only the handful of outdated ships they sold us when we joined their little club." Park stood slowly, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the magnificent deception they had built together. 40 years of careful planning, patient infiltration, and technological development had led to this moment. The aliens thought they had executed a primitive diplomat from a backward world. In reality, they had just declared war on the most advanced predatory species the galaxy had ever seen. "Send the activation codes to all assets," Park commanded, his voice carrying across the command center. "Tell them the masquerade is over. It's time to show the Council what happens when you execute a human diplomat." The hunt was about to begin. The activation signal reached every corner of the galaxy simultaneously, transmitted through quantum channels the Council didn't even know existed. In that instant, thousands of sleeper agents received the same message. The masquerade was over, and the hunt had begun. On the prison world of Kethmore, Kim Tae dropped his mop bucket and smiled for the first time in 3 years. The alien guards had always seen him as just another refugee worker, grateful for any job that kept him fed. His hunched posture and timid demeanor had made him invisible, exactly as intended. Now he straightened to his full height, his movements suddenly precise and deadly. The explosives he had been carefully placing throughout the facility for months were microscopic, embedded in cleaning compounds that the guards' scanners registered as harmless maintenance supplies. Each device was smaller than a grain of sand, but packed with enough concentrated energy to vaporize steel. Kim Tae activated them with a thought, his neural implants connecting to the network he had built within the prison's very walls. The explosions came in perfect sequence, each blast timed to create maximum chaos while avoiding civilian casualties. Guard stations vanished in flashes of white light. Security barriers melted like ice. Emergency systems that should have contained the damage instead spread it further. Their programming corrupted by viruses Kim Tae had been patiently installing every time he cleaned their terminals. As alarms shrieked through the corridors, Kim Tae vanished into ventilation shafts he had mapped down to the millimeter. The prison's architects had never considered that their maintenance systems could become highways for someone who knew exactly where they led. Within minutes, he was outside the facility's walls, watching from a distant hill as one of the galaxy's most secure installations burned. 3 star systems away in the massive shipyards orbiting Rigel Prime, Han Sol put down his engineering tablet and walked calmly toward the central command center. For 5 years, he had been catalogued as Species 247 in the facility's records, a designation given to refugee workers whose exact origin worlds were unclear. The alien supervisors barely looked at him anymore, just another face among thousands of displaced beings grateful for employment. But Han Sol wasn't grateful, he was patient. The viruses he uploaded into the fleet's navigation systems were works of art, designed to activate only when ships reached specific coordinates. As the evening shift change began and dozens of warships departed for routine patrols, the malicious code triggered simultaneously across 37 vessels. The results were spectacular and horrifying. Massive dreadnoughts that had terrorized rebellious worlds for centuries suddenly lost all directional control. Their engines fired at full power in random directions, sending multi-kilometer vessels spinning like toys. Some crashed into orbital stations, their hulls tearing through metal and ceramic like paper. Others collided with each other in brilliant explosions that lit up the Rigel system like new stars. Han Sol watched the destruction from the facility's observation deck, standing among panicking alien supervisors who couldn't understand how their most advanced ships had suddenly turned into instruments of their own destruction. None of them suspected the quiet refugee engineer, who had been checking their systems for years, gradually learning every weakness and preparing for this moment. Meanwhile, in the Council's most secure communication hub, Lim Nari carried her coffee tray through corridors she had memorized during 2 years of faithful service. The alien security officers nodded to her as always, their multiple eyes barely registering her presence. She was part of the furniture, a harmless domestic worker who brought refreshments to beings far more important than herself. The irony was delicious. These same creatures had just watched their council execute a human diplomat for refusing to surrender Earth's technological secrets. They had no idea that one of their own coffee servers possessed access codes that could crack their most classified databases. Lim Nari's neural implants interfaced with the hub's central computer through microscopic transmitters hidden in her jewelry. To any scanner, she appeared to be wearing simple decorative elements appropriate for a service worker. In reality, each piece was a sophisticated hacking device that had taken years to position properly within the facility's most sensitive areas. The virus she uploaded was devastating in its simplicity. Rather than destroying data, it copied everything and transmitted it instantly to human intelligence networks throughout the galaxy. Military deployment schedules, diplomatic communications, personal files on every council member, financial records, strategic assessments of every species under council control. Everything flowed through quantum channels to waiting human analysts. As the upload completed, Lim Nari set down her coffee tray and walked calmly toward the exit. Security systems that should have detected the massive data breach instead reported normal operations. The guards who should have stopped her smiled and waved goodbye, completely unaware that their entire civilization's secrets had just walked past them in the hands of a woman they considered beneath notice. Back in the council chambers, Counselor Vextar's crystalline form shook with rage as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Explosions at maximum security facilities, fleet disasters in supposedly safe systems, communication networks compromised at the highest levels. The scope of the coordinated attack was impossible to comprehend. "This is impossible," he screamed, his compound eyes blazing with fury. "How did primitives infiltrate our most secure installations? We watched them arrive in the galaxy barely 50 years ago. They begged us for membership." The main display screen flickered, its normal council insignia replaced by simple text written in perfect galactic standard. The message appeared simultaneously on every screen in the chamber, broadcast through communication systems the council thought were impenetrable. "We are not primitives. We are hunters, and you just became our prey." Humanity. The hunt had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Councillor Vextar's morning routine had remained unchanged for 23 years. He entered his private office at precisely 0800 Galactic Standard Time, activated the security shields, and reviewed overnight intelligence reports while his first meal of crystalline nutrients dissolved in his specialized feeding chamber. The office was his sanctuary, protected by 17 different scanning systems and monitored by the Council's most advanced artificial intelligence. But today, something was different. A piece of paper lay on his desk, so ordinary and primitive that his compound eyes almost dismissed it entirely. Human children's artwork was crude by galactic standards, drawn with simple colored pigments on processed wood pulp. This particular drawing showed stick figures representing his family, his mate, his 3 offspring, even his elderly parent who lived in seclusion on their homeworld. Each figure had been marked with a bold red X. Vextar's exoskeleton clicked. As he stepped backward, his breathing apparatus wheezing in alarm, he activated every security protocol simultaneously, flooding the office with scanning beams and detection fields. The results were impossible to accept. No intruder had entered. No security system had been triggered. According to the building's AI, which monitored every molecule of air that moved through the facility, nothing unusual had occurred. "Security Chief!" Vextar's voice cracked through the intercom. "Emergency protocol, seal the building." But even as guards flooded the corridors and scanners swept every surface, more evidence of human presence appeared. In his private bathroom, toothpaste had been arranged to spell out "We see you" in perfect galactic script. His personal communicator contained new messages, conversations between his family members that had taken place in supposedly secure locations light years away. Across the galaxy, the psychological assault intensified with surgical precision. On the waterworld of Aquatica Prime, Admiral Zephlin of the Zephyrian fleet awoke to find his bedroom walls covered with detailed blueprints of his flagship's engine room. Every weakness, every vulnerable system, every emergency protocol was laid out in meticulous detail. His personal security team found no evidence of intrusion, but someone had clearly spent hours in his most private space. The Admiral's 3 children discovered similar messages when they arrived at their exclusive academy. Lockers that had been sealed with biometric locks contained photos of their father's secret military installations. Teachers who had worked at the school for decades suddenly began asking pointed questions about classified fleet movements, their familiar faces now seeming alien and threatening. In the crystalline spires of the Andromedan corporate sector, CEO Clixithara found her executive suite rearranged with impossible precision. Every piece of furniture had been moved exactly 3 centimeters to the left. Her private safe, protected by quantum encryption that should have been unbreakable, stood open and empty. The contents, financial records that could destroy entire star systems' economies, had been photographed and returned to their exact positions, but with small human sticky notes attached to each document. The notes contained simple messages in her own language. Embezzlement of refugee funds, very naughty. Weapons sales to slave traders, not very nice. Personal torture chamber on level 47, we disapprove. The terror spread as council leaders realized the scope of their exposure. Private communications that had never been transmitted were being quoted back to them. Family secrets that existed only in sealed genetic records were being revealed. Military codes that changed hourly were somehow being intercepted before they were even generated. High above the gas giant Tempest 7th, Admiral Korvek of the Zephyrian Deep Space Fleet faced a different kind of horror. His massive battle group, 200 ships strong, patrolled what their sensors showed as completely empty space. Yet every day, vessels vanished without trace or explanation. "Where are they?" he demanded, his tentacles lashing against his command. Chair as another destroyer simply ceased to exist on his tactical display. Long-range scans show nothing. No energy signatures, no mass shadows, no gravitational disturbances. How can an entire fleet disappear into nothingness? His science officer, a crystalline being whose species had mastered sensor technology millennia ago, could only gesture helplessly at instruments that registered normal space in all directions. "Admiral, our equipment is functioning perfectly. According to every scanner we possess, we are alone in this system." But they weren't alone. Human stealth technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council could imagine. Ships that appeared as natural phenomena drifted between the alien vessels like ghosts, their hulls perfectly mimicking background radiation and stellar debris. When they struck, it was with weapons that left no trace, simply causing targeted vessels to suffer what appeared to be catastrophic system failures. 3 kilometers beneath Seoul, Director Park Min-ho watched the galactic map as red indicators showed the psychological campaign's devastating effectiveness. Council forces were paralyzed by paranoia, unable to distinguish between real threats and imagined ones. Their leaders huddled in bunkers, trusting no one, while their fleets wandered blindly through space that seemed empty but felt alive with watching eyes. Agent Bayek Su's voice crackled through the quantum communicator, transmitted from inside the council chambers themselves. "Sir, I've been Councillor Thexavara's personal translator for 4 years. He brings me to every classified briefing, every strategic planning session. They still think I'm a vegan refugee who lost my homeworld to solar flares. Should I eliminate him now?" Park considered the tactical display showing human assets embedded throughout the council's highest levels. Translators, secretaries, maintenance staff, even family members who had been adopted as children. Humans were everywhere, had always been everywhere, watching and waiting for this moment. "Not yet," Park replied, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what they had unleashed. "Let them understand the scope of their mistake first. We have agents in every major government, every military command, every wealthy family. They killed one of ours. Now they'll learn what that costs." The galaxy had become a hunting ground, and humanity had revealed itself as the apex predator. The great council chambers that had once echoed with the arrogant proclamations of alien supremacists now stood silent, except for the soft hum of holographic displays. Director Park Min-ho sat in the Supreme Councillor's chair, a throne carved from crystalline formations that had taken the original builders 3 centuries to complete. The irony wasn't lost on him. A human now occupied the seat of power that had been designed to dwarf and intimidate primitive species. 6 months had passed since the hunt began, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the civilization that had executed Ambassador Kim Hana. The transformation had been swift, surgical, and absolute. Where once mighty alien fleets patrolled trade routes with impunity, human vessels now maintained order with quiet efficiency. The sleek black ships moved through space like predatory fish, their advanced stealth systems making them appear and disappear at will. Park's weathered hands rested on armrests that had once supported the limbs of Councillor Vexitar. The crystalline being now stood with 47 other former council members in a neat row, their ornate robes replaced by simple grey uniforms that marked their new status as subjects of the Terran hegemony. The mighty beings who had ruled hundreds of star systems now waited for permission to speak, their compound eyes and sensor stalks focused submissively on the floor. "Former councillors," Park's voice carried easily through the vast chamber, no longer needing the amplification systems that had made alien voices boom with artificial authority. "You believed you were apex predators ruling over primitive species. You were wrong. Humans have been the apex predators all along. We simply allowed you to believe otherwise." The holographic displays around him showed the new galactic order in stunning detail. Star systems that had been controlled by various alien races now bore the blue and white insignia of the Terran hegemony. Trade routes flowed under human supervision. Military installations operated according to human strategic doctrine. Even the currency had changed. The complex energy credit systems of the old council replaced by straightforward resource allocation managed by human artificial intelligence. Agent Nam-hee stepped forward from her position near the chamber's main entrance. For years she had served as the council's chief of security, a trusted Altarian refugee whose expertise in threat assessment had earned her access to their most classified information. The aliens had never suspected that their security chief was human, her appearance modified by biotechnology that made council scanners register her as a completely different species. "All remaining fleets have surrendered, Director," Nam-hee reported with professional precision. The Zephyrian Armada laid down arms after Admiral Korvek realized that 30% of his senior officers were human operatives. The Andromedan corporate fleet surrendered when their supply lines were cut by our embedded logistics personnel. Total casualties among alien forces, minimal. They simply gave up once they understood the scope of our infiltration. Park nodded approvingly. The psychological warfare had worked exactly as planned. Rather than destroying alien civilizations, humanity had simply revealed that those civilizations had never truly been in control. The revelation that humans had been watching, learning, and preparing for decades had shattered alien confidence more effectively than any weapon. "The execution of Ambassador Kim Hana was meant to frighten us into submission," Park continued, his gaze moving across the assembled former leaders who had cheered for her death just months ago. Instead, it served as the signal to end our charade. For decades, we infiltrated your societies, learned your weaknesses, positioned ourselves in your governments and militaries. You never saw us coming because you looked down on us. Former Councillor Vextar's exoskeleton clicked nervously as Park's words sank in. The proud being who had ordered a human's execution now understood that his own personal staff, his family's caregivers, even his children's teachers had been human agents reporting his every action back to Earth. The security systems he had, trusted with his life, had been designed and maintained by the very species he had considered primitive. Park stood slowly, his movement deliberate and commanding. At 68 years old, he had dedicated his entire adult life to this moment. Every assignment in human intelligence, every policy decision, every strategic planning session had been building toward the day when humanity would claim its rightful place as the galaxy's dominant species. Humanity's patience was our greatest weapon, he declared, his voice echoing off crystal walls that had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of alien empires. We let you think you were in control while we prepared for this moment. You saw refugee workers, maintenance staff, translators, and domestic servants. We saw deep cover operatives gathering intelligence and awaiting activation. Through the chamber's massive windows, the sky above the former Council homeworld told the story of humanity's victory. Sleek human battleships moved in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the system's binary stars like mirrors. These weren't the crude vessels that Earth had supposedly built with alien assistance. These were weapons platforms that incorporated technology the Council had never imagined possible, developed in secret facilities hidden throughout human space. The transition hadn't required the destruction of entire worlds or the extinction of alien species. Instead, humanity had simply removed the illusion of alien superiority and replaced it with efficient administration. Alien citizens found their lives largely unchanged, except that their new human administrators actually delivered on promises of prosperity and security that the old Council had made but never kept. In classrooms across the galaxy, both human and alien children learned revised history. The textbooks now accurately described the brief period when humanity had pretended to be just another member species begging for acceptance from alien superiors. Teachers explained how this had been the final phase of a patient infiltration campaign that spanned generations, with human families maintaining their cover identities across multiple generations to achieve perfect integration into alien society. The age of alien councils was over. The age of human leadership had begun, not through conquest but through the revelation that it had always been inevitable. The end.